Since writing instruction manuals is hard, we will do our best today to try and explain how construction points work, how the mechanisms with regards to the construction point increase also works, so that you can plan your systems and architect them in the most effective way possible, considering the lack of documentation that currently exists in game. So what do you need to know as far as construction points are concerned? Well, a few things. First and foremost, that there's two classes of construction points. There's tier 2 construction points and there's tier 3 construction points. And they're generated by different things and they're used for different things. Generally speaking, tier 1 installations, which sometimes show up under this sort of like opal tier, but they don't always fall under here. Planetary installations are a bit all over the place. These things require a series of materials, and they generally all give you one tier 2 construction point, which is one of these yellow things here. Tier 2 construction points are then used by tier 2 facilities, which require tier 1 construction points to be built, and sometimes have additional requirements, like in the case of a security installation, it wants a relay station in addition to the construction points. And tier 2 installations will convert these tier 2 construction points into these green tier 3 construction points, typically at a ratio of 1 to 1. Now, there's an exception to this rule, however, in that large planetary settlements convert tier 2 points to tier 3 points at a ratio of 1 to 2. In that sense, large planetary settlements are incredibly valuable for that reason, because essentially they double your points. You can use just 2 tier 2 construction points and they will give you 6 tier 3 construction points, which is what you will need to build your first set of tier 3 stations, if you could choose to go down that route. Every other tier 2 facility, be it space or planetary, instead only converts 1 tier 2 point to 1 tier 3 point, and as a result is far less efficient. For this particular reason, systems with a high number of planetary slots are particularly valuable, because planetary slots allow you to multiply points in a way that you simply cannot do using space slots. And furthermore, planetary slots allow you to build planetary ports in terms of tier 3 facilities that are by far the best facility in the game as far as the statistics of a settlement are concerned. So, all things being equal, planetary slots in any given system are more valuable than space slots. Noting that, again, you will need a combination of the two. Now, what happens with regards to the construction point cost as you build more things in a system? Generally, when you look at installation and tier 2 installation and tier 2 planetary settlements, nothing happens. Like, the cost of these installations is always 1, and they will always give you 1 or 2 tier 3 construction points. This does not change regardless of how much you build inside the system. What does change, and in a meaningful way, is what stations end up costing. So, for instance, if you were to want to go and build a Coriolis station in a system that barely has anything built, like this one, a Coriolis station would, and the same as goes for the asteroid station, so all tier 2 space stations, would cost you 3 tier 2 points and give you 1 tier 3 point. Whereas if you were to go and build a tier 3 station, this would cost you 6 tier 3 points and give you nothing, because this is the ultimate sort of highest tier consumption. Now, this is the base cost, and this only applies to the first 2 stations that you begin to construct. The moment you plot down your second station, regardless of whether you completed the first or not, and regardless of whether the second is anywhere near completion, the point cost of these stations goes up. And what happens is, what you can see in this system, that the point increases from 3 and 6 to 7, as you can see, to 5, from 3 and 6 to 5, like this station now costs 5 tier 2 construction points, And the tier 3 station has doubled. It now costs 12 construction points. Now, this doesn't stop here, however. So if you construct an additional station, again, regardless of whether it's a tier 2 or tier 3, and regardless of whether they're completed or not, this happens the moment you begin construction of an additional station. Well, what happens then is that you end up in a situation like the Pleiades Zoo, which I can't directly see here because I actually have the architect under a different account. But take my word for it, that cost goes up to 7 tier 2 construction points for tier 2 stations, and it goes up to 18 tier 3 points. This is the situation in this current system. But again, I can't directly show you, but again, take my word for it, and I actually have a screenshot somewhere of it. Building an additional station here would require 7 tier 2 points if you were to put down a Coralie, or 18 tier 3 points if we were to construct an Orbis or Ocellus. And the trend presumably continues. So the series is 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, etc. for tier 2 stations, and 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and so on for tier 3 stations. Now, this has major implications as far as system architecture is concerned, because first and foremost, like nothing else in the architecture model, this means that the order in which you build things matters. If you build 2 tier 2 stations, like if you were to build 2 Coralies here, for example, those would be sufficient to kick into high gear the cost of a tier 3 station. So that would make a tier 3 station that you want to build thereafter double as expensive. From a strategy standpoint, what this means is you want to build your tier 3 stations first. As counterintuitive as this is, the point increase of tier 3 stations is much, much higher of a tier 2 station point increase. If you were to build, let's say, 3 Coriolis stations, you would have to spend 3 points for the first one, 3 points for the second one, and 5 points for the third one. But now you would have to spend a total of 18 tier 3 points, which is a massive amount for your T3 station. However, if you were to build your T3 station first, that would only cost you 6 tier 3 points, and the subsequent tier 2 Coriolis stations would cost you 3, then 5, then 7, which is a much, much, much smaller number than if you were to build the Coriolis stations to begin with. So again, as a general rule, start with your tier 3 stations until you're happy with the number of tier 3 stations you have in the system, and then go ahead and build your Coriolis system, your Coriolis stations or asteroid base stations, because of the mechanism and how it works. Another thing to know, which matters, is, and which is particularly important now that we kind of know more about this, is your initial station, like the beginning port, the one that you select when you choose the claim and choose which station to build, does not count in this equation. So you can effectively get an extra Orbis or an extra Coriolis or an extra asteroid base without the point increase kicking in so quickly if you choose that station as your beginning station. You will also get the applicable points. So if you build an outpost, you get a tier 2 point. If you build a Coriolis, you get a tier 3 point. This again changes the equation to a degree, because if you're truly trying to min-max a system, other things being equal, and assuming you have the resources and backing of a group or someone who can actually help you do it, or you're particularly committed on a personal basis, the incentive to start with a tier 3 station is now much, much, much higher, as that will give you an additional 200,000 population from the get-go compared to the 5,000 population that a mere outpost gives you, in addition to some pretty good system stats also to begin with, without resulting in the point increase mechanism that happens if you instead go and build those stations thereafter. Not to mention that you don't have to build all the supporting and infrastructure facility required to build a tier 3 station, which is significant to begin with. So that's really all you need to know at this point in time. And this is, I think, finally at this point, both generally well understood and generally officially confirmed, as further developments have officially confirmed that this point increase mechanism is intentional and it continues past your second station. So all of that is officially validated information. And the rest, with regards to how points are generated and consumed, is generally pretty clear. Like, the one thing which is somewhat not clear and may or may not be a bug is that some small planetary settlements, like for example, tourist and scientific small and medium settlements, actually cost tier 2 points instead of generating them, and that may be a bug. Whether that is a bug or not, we will see, but it only applies to small and medium tourist and scientific settlements. Again, whether that is by design or is a bug is still one of the things that is up in the air as far as like the point calculation is concerned. What we will not talk about today, because it's really not working as intended, and I know there's a lot of questions about this, but we will have to do this in a separate video once things get sorted out to a greater degree, is how the economies of stations work. Now, there's been a comment that they need to be in orbit of a planet, as they will only pick up the economy of the planet they're orbiting. But right now, this is not working as intended. So even if that is how it is intended to work, it is not working as intended. And obviously, that leaves a whole range of stations that we are built around stars completely stranded, as there's no obvious way to convert them into something useful, since obviously you can't build a settlement on a star. And as a result, the stations that are orbiting stars are effectively unable to pick up a market without some changes with regards to how the colonization system currently works. But the only thing we know is that they're looking into this issue and they're going to let us more at a later date. So that's all for this video. Hopefully it gives you some additional information with regards to how to plan your system. One thing I will add at the end is I highly recommend Commander DaftMav's interactive spreadsheet for planning your own systems. This is incredibly well done. The last I have is version 2. I know that he was working on a version 3 that also took into account the calculation with regards to the point increases. But this lets you play with how you would design a system and how many points you need and how many slots you're going to use and whether it works or doesn't and how it affects the industry and what requirements or prerequisites are required. So this is an incredible tool to actively plan your system and architect it in a way that appears, at least on paper, meaningful and in a way that actually works. I've been using this extensively myself. I love it. So I'll put the link to a spreadsheet in the video comments in the video section below. And as always, we'd love to hear from you, whether this is helpful and whether there's anything you would add with regards to how the point system works. And glory to mankind. Come on, Mechan. Over and out.